In the heart of a village where time was measured not by the sun, but by the chimes of 100 clocks, lived a young man named Leo. He was the clockmaker's son, born with gears in his blood and a spring in his step. His father, a master of his craft, could coax life into the most stubborn of timepieces. Leo, however, had a different touch. A touch that often ended with a disheartening sprowing and a cascade of tiny, defeated parts. "Patience, my son," his father would say, his voice as steady as a pendulum's swing. "A clock has its own rhythm. You must listen before you act." But Leo was a whirlwind of youthful energy. He saw a stopped clock not as a puzzle to be solved, but as an enemy to be conquered. He'd dive in, screwdriver in hand, convinced that speed was the key. He'd tighten a screw too far, nudge a gear too hard, and another intricate dance of brass and steel would fall silent under his eager hands. For every clock he tried to fix, two more seemed to break. The pile of Leo's projects in the corner of the workshop grew into a graveyard of good intentions. The villagers, once hopeful, began to whisper, "He has the hands of a blacksmith, not a clockmaker." One would murmur, "He's all haste and no harmony." Another would add, Leo heard them. Each word was a tiny crack in his confidence. He began to resent the very thing he was born to love, the gentle, constant ticking that was the heartbeat of his home. He saw his reflection in the polished faces of the clocks he couldn't mend a failure, out of sync with his own destiny. One bleak afternoon, after a particularly disastrous attempt to repair the mayor's prized grandfather clock, Leo fled the workshop. He ran until the village chimes faded, finding himself by a quiet stream in the woods. The water flowed, not with the frantic rush he felt in his chest, but with a calm, unhurried purpose. It moved around rocks, under fallen branches, never stopping, but never forcing its way. He watched a leaf fall onto the surface, gently carried along by the current. It wasn't racing to the sea. It was simply on its journey. Something clicked inside him, a connection far more profound than any gear he had ever tried to place. He realized his father's words weren't just about clocks, they were about life. To fix time, he first had to understand its pace. Rushing was the enemy, not the solution. He had been trying to force the river when all he needed to do was follow its flow. He returned to the workshop that evening, a different person. The graveyard of broken clocks no longer looked like a monument to his failures, but a library of lessons. He picked up the simplest one, a small mantel clock he'd shattered weeks ago. He didn't reach for his tools. He just sat with it, looking, listening. He traced its delicate hands, felt the cold metal of its gears. He closed his eyes and imagined its heart beating once more. Slowly, carefully, he began to work, his movements now a gentle dance rather than a frantic battle. A screw turned just so, a spring set with a delicate touch. Hours later, as dawn painted the sky, a soft, clear tick-tock broke the silence. It was steady, perfect. His father stood at the doorway, a proud smile gracing his lips. Leo hadn't just fixed a clock, he had found his own rhythm. He learned that the most intricate problems, whether in a clock or in life, aren't solved by force. They yield to patience. Rushing often breaks what patience can repair. Thank you so much for joining me on this story today. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a like and subscribe for more tales that make you think. See you in the next one.